Welcome to the Album Anniversary Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb, or Caleb the Spy on Twitter and Instagram. And today's episode is not about a specific album, but we're going to talk about Christian ska bands, all sorts of Christian ska bands, ranking your favorite Christian ska bands, all that stuff. I'm going to say Christian ska bands 10,000 times during this show. Usually on the show, we break down an album and try and answer 5 simple questions about an album that's celebrating an anniversary. But today, we're doing something totally different. Like I mentioned today, I'm joined by a couple of Christian ska experts. Yes, you've been tagged with that line, whether you like it or not. And we're going to rank and break down the greatest Christian ska bands of all time. I'm being a little facetious, but we're going to talk about some of our favorites. So thanks so much for joining me. Todd and Philip, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. Glad to be here. Glad to be back.
Awesome. Well, speaking of that, so Todd has been on the show before. He joined me for the episode I did about Scalleluia. I was also joined by Joe Yerke on that episode. That was super fun. So go back if you haven't and check out that show. And usually on the show when I have a guest, I like to kind of get to kind of know your connection to music or that sort of thing. Todd got to do some of that on that show. So we're gonna kind of breeze over some of Todd's story. It's really interesting, especially related to Christian ska stuff. Running a website into the 2000s for some reason, I'm not sure why, but was doing that. So you should definitely go back and check out that show if you want to learn more about kind of Todd's connection with Christian ska. That's what I would suggest for that.
Yeah, I would just say the main thing, and something that Caleb and I have discovered since then. I had on the forums of skaforchrist.com in the early 2000s, the members of the forum created a list, and I think we had about 80 or so Christian ska bands people were able to identify at that time. Some of them, all we have is a name now. Like, I can't tell you anything about them other than someone said there was a Christian ska band by this name somewhere, but that's pertinent to what's going on today.
So if you want that list, you know how to get a hold of Todd. He sent it to me at one point,
yeah.
And I have been looking through it, trying to find anything I can about some of these bands.
Yeah.
Not very successful on a lot of them. So Philip is new to the show. I was lucky enough to join his show, Trivia on a Shtick, which is a podcast that he runs, he helps run, and I was got to he's involved with. Let's give you some credit on it. I was able to join that. And it was really fun to be on their show. And so this is the first time being on my show. And so, Philip, introduce yourself and just kind of, what is your connection with, Christian ska? And I know you've got a couple stories and I'm telling you to save one of them for later. Well, so there's more to come on this, but yeah, kind of your connection to Christian ska music.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I like all kinds of music. I grew up in a musical household. I learned how to play piano, trumpet, tuba, guitar. I was a vocalist. And we didn't just listen to Christian music. I know you have a lot of people on the show that listen to mostly Christian music, but I went to a concert, a big festival called Purple Door in Pennsylvania. I don't know if any of your listeners have heard of it, but the debate was always Purple Door versus what's the difference between Purple Door and Cornerstone, or Purple Door and some of those other Creation Fest, right? The big festivals, the big Christian festivals that were out there. But Purple Door was kind of a more edgy Christian music where you had the Pedro the Lion tent and Me Without You tent, whereas there weren't so many Michael W. Smiths that were sharing the stage. Five Iron Frenzy played, POD played, and I would go to that festival every year, and that's what got me into the Christian ska niche, if you will. And then, maybe I'll share a little bit about this later. I went to Croatia for a year as an exchange student, and when I got there was a kid at the music school that was wearing an OC Supertones t-shirt in Croatia.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Supertones. Like, you like the Supertones? And he's like, you know the Supertones? I was like, I just saw him a month ago, Purple Door. And he was like, that's so he's like, are you Christian? I was like, yeah. He's like, that's so crazy. And then, yeah, we became fast friends. And then I really, really got into the Christian ska world because he was so into it. You know, if you find a friend that likes something, that helps you get into that thing.
Well, and that's such a cool story, and I think that that's part of. I think you've told me that story before. I when did we've talked before about it before, and I remember hearing it and just kind of being almost blown away by like the chance of running into somebody in Croatia, and then to kind of find out who they are. And well, it's the October Light for anybody who doesn't know. We'll get to them when we talk about later and kind of why I know you have a real strong connection to them, not just because of
Yeah.
that, but because of the music. So I'm excited to highlight them. I've talked about them on the show. I think it is something that makes the scene endearing. I don't know what it is about it, but it's a really cool story. So
And ska's so goofy, you know, ska's a goofy, goofy thing. Pretty self-deprecating when it comes to like how ska talks about itself, both within the Christian scene and, the
yeah.
secular scene.
Yeah.
So a little bit about my story. I don't know if I've ever actually shared this on the podcast. I think I probably have. I don't know if I have, but I've talked with people about it. But like for me, it really was this evolution of I was super into the Christian music scene and I was into a lot of the alternative stuff, and then MXPX and kind of the Christian punk stuff had become like my jam. I was so into it. This was like who I wanted to be, my identity. I always joke around that Teenage Politics came out in like 95, and for a year that was like who I wanted to be, was just MXPX and Teenage Politics. And I don't know if I ever really pulled it off living in suburban Minnesota. I don't know if I was ever all that punk. But then 1996, ska blows up. I mean, that's when Sellout. I see ska in general. It's like height of explosion is when Sellout is the like
Mm-hmm.
song that's on the radio, and that's probably oversimplifying it, but that's for me is kind of when I see it at its absolute height is 1996. Sellout is on the radio, it's on MTV, and it's just blowing up everywhere. And I remember when the Supertones came out, that album, Adventures of Supertones, came out in April of 1996, and I feel really confident we knew it was coming because of either Seven Ball or some connection. We knew it was coming. We were waiting for it, and we were excited to get it because I feel like we got it almost immediately and was totally into it. By the end of 1996, I had heard Five Iron. They were on the Take Time to Listen compilation that 5 Minute Walk used to do, and I still remember we were at a Black Eyed Siva show, who was another band on 5 Minute Walk, which is the record label Five Iron Frenzy was on. We're sitting in the back, and we could hear they were playing the Take Time to Listen thing CD before the show started, and A Flowery Song came on, and I was like, what is this? What is this? And I like walked over to the sound booth, and I was like, what is playing? They're like, it's this. You can buy it down at the booth. Went down and bought it, and I have been hooked since. I mean, that Five Iron is my favorite band. Everybody kind of knows that at this point, and I have been hooked. And by the time the Insiders came out in 1997 with their Motor City Ska, that was it. Like I was kind of all in, and I feel like it kind of set the tone for a lifetime of music for me because I still go back to the Christian ska stuff. And then I have to say, thanks to the Ska Lives compilations that came out in right around the 2010s, I want to say 2011, that was such a huge introduction to a whole bunch of Christian ska bands I had never even heard of, that I thought I was really into the scene. And those compilations came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many more. And that's when I really started to do the digging into like, how many more of these can I find, which is what I've been doing for the last 15 years. So
One of the guys involved with those compilations was also like heavily involved as a member of our forums on skaforchrist.com back then. I was preparing, like I was starting to put out feelers to create our own compilation album at that time. Because the basic goal of that website, Ska for Christ, was to support Christian ska bands and like help
Mm-hmm.
market them and get the word out and whatever, and just let people talk about them. But then Ian Devaney, who's also like Indie Vision Music, he basically said, hey, how about instead you just sort of, put your like lend support towards this instead of doing your own thing, since I'm about to do my own thing. So
Yeah.
we never put out our own. But yeah, so I remember that pretty
Yeah.
vividly.
All right, Supertones, let's rock.
No, I really appreciate those compilations. I think they're a great little resource. And I don't know everything on there is Christian, but it's a good segue into how I'm defining things. So I want to jump into some of these bands, but I do want to throw it out there. Like, I am very liberal with my and not politically. That's a whole other discussion. I am very liberal with my definition of ska. I'm not gonna lie. Squad 5-O's first two albums, I'm calling that ska adjacent. It's not. It's ska punk, but I'm throwing it in there because it's fun for the conversation. And then like a band like Blood and Water, which I would argue is kind of pop punk with horns occasionally. They have kind of, they'll do the little riff, the little ska riffs here and there. I throw them in there. They were on the Ska Lives compilation. So I'm very liberal with my definition of ska. Apologies to the purists. That's my problem. But that's I start there.
I am also fairly liberal with that definition, in part because it has been through so many iterations that like coming up with a term that can like make a cohesive whole out of all of these things is very difficult. Like, it's very difficult to make one term to define ska that would span everything called ska from 1950 until now.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just at the Denver Ska Fest a couple weeks ago, seeing Five Iron Frenzy and some lesser bands like Less Than Jake and Goldfinger. And there were some people, there was almost like a fight. And like I did not say a word, but there was like the guy who like loves like traditional Jamaican ska versus the guy who like thinks that like ska punk is much better. And like I was actually on the side of, even though I love ska punk, I do have a lot of respect for like traditional Jamaican roots music. So I was more on the side of the guy who had that opinion, but it was sort of funny to me. There was like tension about what is like real ska, or at least like what is the best ska. So yeah.
Yeah, I listened to an interview. I don't know if it was Five Iron or Supertones or Smash Mouth or No Doubt. Where they said, well, this was the summer of ska, not to be confused with the summer of swing, which was, preceded it by a summer, right?
Yeah.
Because you had like Lou Bega and Cherry Poppin' Daddies, and then you moved into ska right after that, right? It was right after that came ska. Yeah. But then some of the bands are kind of like they do a little bit of like, branching out into both.
Yeah.
I think that includes some of the ones on this list. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
All that to say, I think it's okay that you're not a purist.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these bands then moved into even like rock with horns, or even use some of those different things. Like I can't believe I'm gonna reference the October Light again. Their last album in 2019, the second half of that, they really play with a lot of genres that are just kind of ska adjacent, and I'm all for that. I really like the second half of that. They showcase some other things, but I'm glad bands did that. I know some people get upset that Five Iron's a great example. They turned into rock with horns for a section. I just don't care. I'm on board with it.
I don't remember if it was Seven Ball or Campus Life or like what like Young People's Christian magazine. I do remember like Buck, like specifically in an interview, someone from Buck like being sort of like offended to be called ska. They were like, no, we are specifically rock with horns. We are not part of this whole ska thing.
Still to this day, some of the members are still like that. I've talked to a couple of the members relatively recently. That some of them kind of embrace it, and some of them really are like, they want to be called rock with horns and won't even respond to me, even though I'm like, hey, I want to talk to you about Christian ska, and they're like, no, I'm not talking to this guy.
See, I like when a band, like, I don't think a band should pigeonhole themselves. Like, one of my favorite, things, and you can find this on YouTube. I never got to see it in concert. Real Big Fish will do this thing where they play the same song over and over again in like different genres. Like, here's the heavy metal version, here's the country western version, here's like the punk version, etc.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's just fun. Like, play with different genres of music, like, I think that also shows good like musicianship.
Yeah.
If you're actually able to pull off playing your song in all these different genres, that shows that, you're more than just a one-trick band.
I don't think that was Real Big Fish. I'm pretty sure that was the Pants Rock Opera by Five Iron Frenzy.
I don't know which one did it first. Probably Five Iron Frenzy. I don't know. Yeah.
Real Big Fish is such a good example of a band that really embraced the ska thing. Like, when all the other ska bands died off, like, they kept on just doing it, and they're like, you can call it rock with horns. We don't care. We're playing the music we like. And I'm not a huge Real Big Fish fan, but I really do respect Aaron specifically, because that's about the only person left in that band.
He's really the only one left.
Yeah. Well, I think they're technically
I don't know
dead.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I had a ticket for what is now, like, retrospectively, their last tour that got canceled due to COVID, and then they haven't scheduled any shows since then. So.
Yeah.
But they're just good, too. I mean, they're New York. I mean, it's not ska, but it is good.
Yeah.
It is good.
Yeah, they're just, like, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just like them. They're enjoyable.
Yeah.
I just like them. This is the definition of this. This is what a lot of ska fans end up having to do, right? It's like, why do you like them? I just like them. I don't have an explanation.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I only started liking them after Sellout, though. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
you tell me.
I
mean,
that was what drew me in. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, not to keep bringing up the Denver Ska Fest, though it was really fun, but like suddenly I have like 4 new bands that I can listen to. Like,
there you go.
I've been listening to like, these, like, a local Denver band, Sorry Sweetheart. Suddenly I love them. Like, they're great. So.
So the other definition I want to do is the definition of Christian here is probably also a pretty liberal definition. I know there is a number of these bands that probably wouldn't define themselves as a Christian band. I know some of these bands are not Christian anymore. A Billion Ernie's is an example that I think if you listen to their first album, there's like some very explicitly Christian stuff, and I think they have all basically left the faith. And I'm not here to commentary. I'm not here to make a commentary. I'm not trying to make a commentary on their faith or what they think. I'm labeling a lot of these bands because at some point they were connected, and even like the Dingies are a really good example. I think they struggle with the connection to the Christian music industry, and I understand them, but they were on Tooth and Nail, for goodness sakes, and on BEC. Yeah. You're part of the scene. It's just, and I don't see it as something to be offended by. So I will say that to people might listen and be like, I wouldn't consider them a Christian ska band because of this. That's fair. I'm being liberal with it because it makes it more of a fun conversation.
I tend to agree, in part because it is like a scene. Like, we're not talking specifically about like people holding on to a certain theology. Like, there was this scene that happened, and if you were a part of that scene, it seems like you're still connected in some way, no matter what you're, like we both have talked about a love of MXPX. Clearly not a Christian band now, but they were part of that scene,
Yeah.
you know, so
Mhm.
you're going to find a lot of people who have been into Christian music who are also MXPX fans
Yeah.
because, you know, they were part of that scene at that time.
You posted something on Twitter recently, Caleb. I don't know if you're on Twitter ever, but you posted something recently. So I can't keep up with everything you post.
Yeah, sorry. That's my
But
bad.
it's great. But somebody said that they couldn't listen to the music. They said they liked the music, but they couldn't get into it because of the Christian, influence or whatever. And I respect that. On the other hand, I think a lot of Christians listen to secular music and they can, they're not embracing the message necessarily of whatever culture they're promoting. But I don't know what it is, but I feel like, and maybe you're like, this is what we're not talking about on the show. I specifically said that.
No, this is good.
But like Christians can embrace and appreciate and go to concerts that are like antithetical to Christian values. And then people who are not Christian, I think, have some hesitancy to listen to Christian music because it's so overtly Christian.
Yeah.
But I'm listening, I had, Eminem's album growing up, and what was the album? It was Marshall Mathers, where he has the song Kim on it, and
Yeah.
it is just a bonkers song. But I don't think it's this, if you have a song that's trying to, maybe it's because of the proselytization aspect of some Christian music where they're trying to bring you over. Eminem's not trying to get me to kill my wife. Hopefully, right?
Some people
So
would argue he is,
I don't know what it is, but I like that. I feel like we get more because we're willing to listen to everybody,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
can appreciate it.
Yeah. I think it is the proselyte. I'm really good. I think it is some of the preaching that comes out of the music. And I've never had a problem with the Supertones who, it was literally, I think it was Dan, was one of the original members. He felt called that they needed to say something at every show, and it got them in trouble because they got invited on a couple secular tours, and they were quickly removed from those tours because they just realized it didn't fly there. And I always felt like they were true to themselves, and so I don't have a problem with it. Like I'm all for them saying this is what we think we should do. It's not good, obviously it didn't work in that setting, and so they had to adjust, and they ended up being much more of just a mainline Christian band. But I think that is part of it. Is I think it makes people uncomfortable. Probably it probably throws people off. They're thinking, oh, I came to the show to see a rock
have a
show,
good time.
you know, and I don't want to hear it. And I can respect that, and I can also I will defend the Supertones, even though they're not in my. We'll get to where they rank in my rankings. I will defend them because I feel like they were absolutely authentic to who they thought they should be, and I respect the crap out of them for that. And so I think that probably plays a factor in it. And I think there's a lot of people who have. Sorry, I'm totally rambling. I think there's a lot of people who have this idea that Christian music's lame, and that's fine. You can go and have that, but I think that's so short-sighted that you're missing out on some potentially great music, and that's people's choice.
Do either of you guys remember who's the lead singer of Dogwood, which was
I
like
don't
Christian
know off
punk
the top
band?
of my head.
I've listened to a couple interviews with him recently. And it's just interesting because he has talked about that same subject and how he said they explicitly were a Christian band, but they did not like always do like an altar call or anything, but sometimes he would feel led to do something like that.
Yeah.
I just think that is, and that's not here. It's not what we're here to talk about, I suppose, but we started talking about it. That is an interesting thing to me, like how some bands make it explicit, like they will always do that. Others say maybe we will always end with like a more worshipy type song, but we might not really do like an altar call thing. And then others just say, hey, sometimes, more like we might have some songs that talk about Jesus, but we would rather, if you want to talk to any of us about it personally after the show, come talk to us.
Yeah.
Like there's many different ways that like Christian rock bands handled that whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's weird because MC Hammer had his Jesus songs on his album, and DMX had his Jesus songs on his album, but it's not like,
I saw MC Hammer during his Christian musician era. He played at Cornerstone on the main stage. Yeah.
Really?
There you go.
Yes.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. I think maybe the Supertones had played earlier in the evening, which was much more like my style. But then also MC Hammer, I don't know if his bus broke down. There was anyway, or for whatever reason, he was late. So like it was just the huge amphitheater full of like rowdy teenagers and young adults like just waiting for over an hour, like after one band got done, and then waiting for MC Hammer to show up. So it was that is like a core memory for me is when I saw MC Hammer at Cornerstone.
That I never even knew. Yeah.
I had no idea the show was going to end up going there. That was not. I wouldn't have put that on my bingo card. That is crazy. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting aspect to it, and I do like the idea that it is a unique, like, try and explain that to somebody who's never had any exposure to the Christian music scene. Like this idea that bands are doing altar calls or doing worship sets at the end. Like, I think it really would genuinely throw people off if they've never had any connection. So I can see that also being part of it. But like, I think we're all three of us, if I'm speaking for you, I apologize, but like, we're so used to it. We didn't think twice about it. Like I never once would have thought twice about it, but that totally is if you bring somebody to a church service and they've never been to a church service, they probably would look around like, oh, this is weird. This is different. It's a different feel.
A lot of people just don't know that scene like existed. Like, because there was definitely this period when, like, you know, Christian music included all these different, you know, like, it was almost like a subset, like this side show or whatever, you know, of like, hey, they've got ska over there, we've got ska over here. Yeah. They've got punk over there, we have punk over here. Like, and, you know, I'm happy that I was a part of that. Like, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I also went to like mainstream shows. Like I went to big festivals and stuff that were not Christian, but I was definitely one of the people who mostly listened to Christian music and then listened to some mainstream stuff on the side.
Yeah. Why even do this show, right? Why talk about Christian ska? I will say I think it was a pretty unique scene. And one of the things that I think is unique about it is that it hung around. Like it was, ska had died in the mainstream, and here it was still 2002, 2003. There's still stuff coming out that was, you had Five Iron released an album then. I think the last Insiders album was 2003 as well. I mean, 2002, 2003, you're still getting these Christian ska bands putting these things out. What do you think it was about? I feel like it instilled a passion in people, and there was something that really connected specifically that Christian scene. Do you guys have any thoughts on why that is, or why for you personally, why it was something that seemed to hang on even after the mainstream had thrown it off and moved on with their lives and were into emo? We were still sitting around skanking to Christian ska bands.
I don't know. They were into emo though. Those emo bands, jeez. Why'd you bring those up? Let's not get sidetracked to that. You know?
I remember at places like Cornerstone, like being in that time period when emo became popular and thinking, I'm like, man, is this what's replacing like goth as like the sad culture? Like goth was a lot cooler. But
I'll take the Cure, please.
Yeah, exactly. Like give me goth music. Like, and also there was even like they had a goth tent at Cornerstone, which was pretty rad. But
really,
the Christian goth scene.
Did MC Hammer show up? Because then I know you're not being straight with us if MC Hammer's there.
He was not in the goth tent.
Okay.
No. I don't know if the goth tent was like official. But it had fully enclosed sides, so you could be in the dark when you went into the goth tent. But yeah, it was great.
But why did it hang around? What, like that's a great. Why did it hang around?
Here's my surmise. One, is like it was just a delayed effect. Like, some things happen in the mainstream and then were like sort of copied into this Christian scene. And maybe part of this is me being from Iowa, and there's long been a joke that like Iowa's stuck in 1994.
That was a South
like,
Park joke.
Yeah, to me, it is a South Park joke, but also as an Iowan, I think it's true. Like, so it feels analogous to me that like the Christian music scene, might have been stuck in that era longer than the mainstream scene was, but also, and I don't know if this is from our previous discussion, Caleb, I think there is something just about it being like, I feel like I've heard someone say this, like, it is just sort of fun music. Like, it does have an almost, almost corny level, but also like wholesomeness to it. At least it can. Like, obviously, you can make some very not wholesome ska songs and bands, but
Sure.
like in the Christian scene, is like this wholesome, happy music that, I feel like it lent itself to that time in Christian culture, basically.
I think that's a big part of it. Like, it's this happy version of punk rock. I think that was something that made it very, very endearing to the Christian culture.
Yeah, if you compare it to like hardcore punk or something, it's definitely a different animal.
Yeah.
Like, that maybe you could, your parents might not, if you're some youth group kid, maybe your parents were not really into you listening to some like hardcore punk or whatever, but they might be okay with you listening to the Supertones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, like, there's something about like ska in general has always attracted like, there's the joke about the band geek who wants to be in a punk rock band, but he can't because he's not cool enough. So he joins the ska band and he becomes the trumpet player because he loved band, he loved marching band, but he also kind of wanted to be in a punk rock band. And so that's where he got connected. I think that is something that is beyond endearing. Like, I think that's the coolest thing ever, that you had these ska bands that had this, going back to Two Tone, there was this inclusiveness that they wanted. It was black and white folks hanging out together, doing this music together. And that came through, and it was much less in the third wave in the 90s ska thing. But I think where it transitioned was, I look at bands like Skank and Pickle, and I know they're not a Christian ska band, but there's stories of Skank and Pickle because they were so weird and they were so out there, and they pulled from so many different places. They pulled from hardcore, they pulled from funk, they pulled from punk, and they pulled from the two-tone ska, that you'd go to a Skank and Pickle show, and the kids it was the band kids next to the punk kids next to the hardcore kids, everybody just with a huge smile on their face, skanking around and dancing. And I think that really fit well in the Christian scene. I think about the lyrics that were being said, and I just think it seems like a perfect match. And then I equate it even to with like the metalcore stuff that happened in the mid 2000s, where like I'm going to say it, this is going to piss people off, I think metalcore is kind of metal light. Like, I think a lot of people look at a lot of metal people look at metalcore and they're like, come on, this is kind of corny, all your melodic things. I think that can happen, but I think that fits well in a Christian scene where I don't want to just have the growling. I want to have these melodic parts where I can get my praise parts in. And so I think there is something about that where the Christian scene takes on these things that help, that just fit well with it. So I think that's why it hung on, because those bands elevated so high. And I think it's those kind of weird aspects. And I'm reaching a little, but that's kind of how I feel like why they had this endearing and enduring factor.
Endearing and enduring. Yeah.
Right. But well, let me say, enduring, like the Kickstarter for Five Iron was just bonkers. That so long, like, I don't know if you guys were big into the End Is Near, the End Is Here albums, and seeing them on their last, and like just how depressing it was that they were done. But you remember the zombie ska guy coming up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was it? It's dark. It's a dark and stormy night, and being like, oh my word, like there's hope, and then the Kickstarter, like, but then they weren't really even ska. I know you said you're liberal in your use of the term ska, but yeah, I'm just saying I agree with everything you said, but how fun was that?
Yeah. Five Iron's a whole other thing too. Like, in my opinion, there's something they connected in a way to the outcast geek nerd folks that I don't know if many
scum
other
of the
bands
earth.
ever have. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say, and I think Five Iron did it in a very special way, but I think that is an aspect to why ska had this like big effect within the Christian scene is, and we don't need to get into the whole like political aspects of it, but like like how Christianity actually is in our culture and its influence, but like as like like a youth group kid, like I don't know, that's maybe the best way for me to describe like a kid who was really involved in church and all that stuff. Like a lot of us, I think, felt like generally sort of outsiders, right? Like like at school and stuff. Like especially if you were going to like a public school where maybe that was not seen as always being super cool.
Hmm.
So I think that's also part of it. Like you sort of see yourself as like an outsider, in some respects, even on a subconscious level, perhaps. And then ska, because it in like in this tongue-in-cheek way, it says like, hey, we're all sort of like outsiders here, like we're all sort of weirdos or whatever who are involved in this ska scene. And Five Iron has tapped into that, right? One, they have songs about it, but two, there's this whole thing of like Five Iron Frenzy fans hating Five Iron Frenzy. Like, there's a very much tongue in cheek, self deprecating, like, hey, we're all weirdos, but yet also, you're welcome to be weird with us sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's part of the secular ska culture as well, right? Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
if you
think
look at
so.
Real Big Fish, like they're pretty self-deprecating too.
Yeah.
That and the thanks for calling us sellouts, not
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that whole song is all kind of making fun of themselves or getting spit on,
Yeah.
and they're
Absolutely.
like, we care, right?
Yeah.
No depth of hell, no creative thing now or soon to come can steal away. A trouble come like a world's last night. Combat turn fight to light. A trouble come like a world's last night. Combat turn fight to light.
So what got me going on this whole show to talk about this was back in, I think it was February. It was cold out. I remember that. It was a Sunday morning. My son had soccer, and I was in the dome and freezing because Minnesota's cold. And I remember doing this thing where I was like, hey, I want to put out a survey, like see if people can, I know of at least 30 Christian ska bands. I want to see if people can rank, if they'll submit their answers for kind of their favorite Christian ska bands. I didn't get a ton of responses, but that's where this started. So I know I've shown you guys the list of kind of some of those bands, and I have a couple that I want to mention as I'm talking about. But looking at those 29, because I had a typo in there, so it's 2930 of the Christian ska bands. Were there, how familiar were you guys with this list of bands? I'll throw out a couple questions. You guys can figure out what you want to talk about. How familiar were you with this list of bands? Were there, any you hadn't heard of? I'm sure there was probably a couple you hadn't heard of because this gets pretty obscure. And then were there ones that surprised you that you were like, oh, I didn't know other people had heard about this? And then are there any that you like that I missed? They're like, how could you not have this Christian ska band on your list? So any of those questions, I know that is really, really broad, but yeah, I don't know if everybody's going to have a specific answer to all those. So I just kind of thought I'd throw them out there and, kind of what are your thoughts on that list? And kind of those are some guiding questions.
So there's a few that I was not familiar with. I think Adam Bender,
Okay.
not a name I had even heard before, I don't think. Maybe not 6 Foot Midget or the Ivy League. Like, I'm looking through your list, Caleb, like, since it's on my screen right now. And maybe 10 to 1. The others, I think I had all at least heard of. I might not have listened to, but I had heard of. The only one that comes to mind that there is some information out there about, like on the internet, that's not on your list, was Under 5'9".
Okay.
They were from Prescott, Arizona. And the only reason I know is a couple members of it did a podcast about their history of having had like a Christian ska band in their teenage years.
Okay.
So if anybody's looking, and I am in no way related to them, like this is not me I'm not being paid to promote them, but they did a podcast. It's over now, but I think all the episodes are still up. Called I think the 4 o'clock ice cream podcast. The band was called Under 5'9", because I guess they were all relatively tall, so it was a joke to call them Under 5'9". Though originally they had been known as the Christones.
That's awful. I'm going to
they
call that
were
awful.
A Christian ska band. But yeah, then they changed their name to Under 5'9". I don't think they ever released an album, but they did some shows. And they were from Prescott, and that's how I know to call it Prescott, because they had a song called Prescott Like Biscuit.
Okay.
To tell people how to pronounce Prescott, Arizona. So yeah.
Nice.
So that's the one I can think of. There's others that I know of that aren't on the list. But yeah, that's the one that I know that like there's information out there about. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I don't know that I'd rank them very high, because I've never, other than a few clips they played on their podcast, I've never really listened to their music. But yeah.
Man, there are a lot on the list that I don't know. I said I'd be out of my depth here compared to you guys, and I looked at your list too, Todd. Like Caleb's got this list of 80, and you've got a list of 84, right?
So it started, I think, with we have basically combined like lists. Yeah. Because I had a list of I think almost 80 that was like from over 10 years ago from the Ska for Christ forums. I just asked people like, hey, let's make a list at that time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So ones that I knew about that aren't on this list, if I could, are of course Seeker's Planet, and 1187 are the two that. And you talked about ska being inclusive. 1187 is a really, really small band, if I recall, from Ohio, really small. And I don't know if anybody has any information on them. They had a song called Red that I liked, but they were they got their name because at the time there were 1,187 different denominations within Christianity. And
nice.
They wanted to be like, like we are one inclusive, like let's be a little bit, again, not to get too theological or the ecumenical movement or whatever, but they're like, we can all rally around ska and Jesus, right? That was my understanding of that band.
I thought you were going to say we can all rally around Christ. I think it's hilarious that sentence ended with ska, not Christ. That is hilarious.
Well, that they have their differences in Christ. They're rallying around Christ, but maybe, you believe in transubstantiation. Maybe you believe in consubstantiation, but ska is the great unifier.
That's awesome.
I am glad that 7 is on the list, because I think that Caleb only knows of 7 because they were a local Nebraska Christian ska band that I knew of from my youth, who does have like a few albums on Bandcamp. So if anybody's like, hey, I need some obscure Christian ska from the 90s, their albums are out there.
So Todd, are you from Nebraska?
I'm from Southwest Iowa, so like I'm near the border between Iowa and Nebraska, so there's a lot of overlap. But I am from Iowa.
So 7 is a Nebraska band. Where
specifically they were from Lincoln, Nebraska. Yeah.
Okay.
And I saw them at my church here in Council Bluffs, Iowa, in Southwest Iowa. There was, we had a pastor at the time who was, and that church is still there. It's not where I currently go, but it was the church I grew up into like my mid-teens or so, and then we went to a different church. But anyway, we had a pastor at that time who was really cool with like allowing us to have like Christian rock concerts and stuff there, like just use the sanctuary of the church, because it is just a big open room to like have concerts, and there'd be like punk shows, and they'd have the occasional like, we brought, alternative rock, and then there was this one ska band at one of the shows, Seven, and I really enjoyed them. They're actually, and Caleb has listened to some of them. There's definitely swing elements to them, so they're actually one of the ones I was thinking of when I said
Right.
there's a combination of swing and ska. Because like if you saw their show, they almost set it up like a traditional like swing bandstand. Like the horn players are behind a little divider and stuff. Like it was set up like a traditional like mid 20th century show or whatever was their like stage presence, which was sort of fun. And I showed up being, because that was maybe a little bit after I had gotten into like music really and was ska. I showed up in like, khakis and a button up shirt and a tie, like many of the pictures I had seen of the Insiders. Because that was my connection to ska. So, yeah.
Can I go on a rant? I listen to a podcast that does, at the end of it, they do rants and raves, right? And here's a little rant. Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple Music, there's so many streaming platforms, and you can't get like, we just put everything on one universal ska database? Like, can't you bring a website back where you're like, here's the ska website where I could just go and listen to it and have everything? Because like we're all missing out on so much stuff that we want because we don't have the exact right, knowledge of where to get to get it, or whatever.
I think Bandcamp is often used by bands to just try to get their stuff out there. And I don't know if is it free or just very cheap to use, because I've never posted stuff to it, but I think that's why Seven's stuff is on there, because the band no longer exists. But I have talked directly to, not too long ago, the former lead singer of the band. That's how I found out their stuff is on Bandcamp, because I found him on Facebook and we just chatted. So yeah, there's services like DistroKid that are supposed to try to get your stuff on all the different streaming platforms for you, but I don't know how much stuff like that costs. But yeah, I agree. Like, it would be great if there was like one big streaming repository, but that is mostly, I think, trying to get multiple different mega corporations to give up their stranglehold on things would be very difficult. Yeah.
Well, I know some bands fight the Spotify phenomenon, and I understand that, but part of me is like, I think it costs like $35 to put your stuff on Spotify. And I'm like, I'm such a fan of some bands that aren't on Spotify. Like, there was a band called Mi Capitan, a little Christian band that nobody really knows. I just love them, but they're on Bandcamp, and it's the only place you can find them. And you have to like click a whole bunch of links to get to the exact spot where their album, where you can buy it again or play it. If you've already lost it from your old iPhone or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I want to say, hey, I'll give you the $35, right? Please just put it on so I can listen to it where I listen to my music. I'll give you 50. Like,
which is more you're gonna make on the streaming for sure.
Right. Exactly. Right.
I think part of it is the paperwork, though, because it's the time that goes into it. Because the reason The End Is Near by Five Iron Frenzy is not everywhere is that they've had a lot of paperwork problems. Like, they cannot get through the paperwork for Apple Music. And so eventually they just put it out on YouTube, because they were like, they've kind of given up on it, I think, is like trying to get it out there. And I know that's why the W's quit being on Spotify, because they used to be on there and it was like somebody's job to fill out the paperwork every year. And that it came to them and they were like, I missed it. And so then it was more paperwork to not do the renewal form. And so they just let it go. So I think that is part of it, because the W's own their music. And that's a one I hear all the time is, why are the W's not on streaming? Because they own their music, and they just, I think they miss the renewal on Spotify, and then it's gone, and then it becomes complicated. So I think it's not just money, it's also the time to fill out all that stuff for, maybe 20 streams. It just, I think for a lot of people, it just doesn't feel worth it, which is a bummer. I totally agree that it kind of gets lost to the ether.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
becomes
there's
lost
no permanence.
media.
Yeah. And some of it's great. great stuff. It's just great stuff. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll say that for the rest of the podcast. We'll just be opining about how we're losing some really great stuff.
I mean, it's true.
Nothing's gonna stop this track. This time, it's got nowhere to turn. No reaches out of there. He tries to understand. Knocking you and screaming. One wasted time. Where you be mine? To show you around. You're all I need. Come and rescue me. I'll sing all down.
So you had mentioned Adam Bender is one that you had not heard of. I think I heard about them on Ska Lives. I think that's where I got connected to them. 6 Foot Midget. I don't know where I found them. I think it might have been somebody hit me up. A couple of these are things that now, once I've talked about ska stuff online, people have hit me up. And the Ivy League is one that somebody hit me up. And I think you can get the Ivy League off Bandcamp. You can just download it. I think they're actually pretty good, although I have not listened to them a ton. So I think that's where I found a lot of these is people kind of hear me talk about it, and then they're like, "Oh, have you ever," just like with you and me and Seven, you're like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this band?" And I was like, I hadn't, and so then I went and go and dig it up and find anything I can on there, and sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not.
If you want a little treasure that will make you feel like very late 90s, and I don't know if you're planning to talk about this because I see it coming up on the script, but this particular band is not listed. On Skanktified, there is a song it's credited to a band called Zion Youth Group. Mm-hmm. They were literally a Mennonite denomination, Mennonite, like Zion Mennonite Church youth group that made a song that there was like a video competition between Mennonite church youth groups nationwide. And they like won the video competition, making like a song and making a music video for it. And that ended up on Skanktified. But that music video, someone has actually uploaded it to YouTube. So if you look up like some like Mennonite youth group, and the song was called Servin, because it's about serving other people in a Christ-like way, is what the song is about. Yeah, that music video is on YouTube, and it's very Five Iron Frenzy-esque. And when I've posted it before, some people have been like, they poo-poo it for that reason. But I'm like, they're literally like children. like, why are you crapping on them for making a video that is similar to, makes them look sort of like Five Iron Frenzy? Like, yeah, that's probably what they were emulating. They were also kids. So like, anyway, yeah, I think it's pretty cute. But
as a Mennonite, a new Mennonite, this is good stuff. Not to get theological.
Great.
But you're not Mennonite, are you, Todd?
I am not. I grew up in the Christian and Missionary Alliance. Yeah. And currently go to like there's this whole, they just call like Christian, like East Side Christian is the church I go to. There's this whole thing with they don't call themselves a denomination, even though I think they fit what a denomination is. But right, sure. And they have colleges and stuff around the country. But yeah, the Christian / Church of Christ Church, if anybody cares, is the kind of church I go to.
Nice.
So I do want to mention a couple. A lot of the big ones are on here. Supertones, Five Iron, Insiders, W's, Dingy's, Buck, Big Dog, Small Fence. Those are kind of the big ones that I would consider are kind of the like, I think a lot of people knew about those.
Big Dog Small Fence might have been one of my favorite shows I ever saw at Cornerstone. And like I even saw Five Iron Frenzy twice, and they're my favorite band, but like Big Dog Small Fence was just very energetic and like fun and great. Yeah.
I was a part of the band for just a brief moment. Their show at Sunshine, that's our music festival up here in Minnesota. Their last song, they said, "Hey, if anybody, we're gonna sing our last song. It's called Ricky Fake. If anybody knows the words, they should come up on stage and sing it with me or sing it with us." Man. And I climbed up on stage. The security guard tried to stop me, and I was like, "He just said if we know the words, we should get up on stage." And I knew all the words, so I jumped up on stage and sang the song with them.
I also know all those words. I wish I would have been there.
So there you go. I was briefly part of Big Dog Small Fence, and I shouldn't have been in that band because those guys were way cooler than I ever was.
Yeah, you're not from like East Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and as far as I can tell, you're not of Mexican ancestry.
Exactly. I don't fit.
Sitting out on the other day, drinking coke and eating Frito-Lay. Can you tell us something common? Familiar faces when the days are by. Heading screamos through the class of 93. It was my senior class, staring back at me. All my friends ended up on the picnic. I must have made a mistake. Should have said something to somebody about the choices they were making and the things they could not see.
So a couple other ones that I do want to mention that kind of got left off this list for various reasons. One is A Billion Ernies. That was a mistake on my part. They're a band that now are kind of not Christian at all, and they definitely were at one point. And so I don't know why I didn't include that because I actually kind of like them. They're like the ska core band, if you know something like Link 80. They're kind of like that. So they really mix in with the hardcore stuff. So I didn't include them. That was a mistake on my part. I'm going to come back to the October Light. Peg and the Rejected could definitely be on here. That is the Dingies just doing straight up ska songs. And I really, really like them. That's the intro music I use on my show.
Yeah.
I really, really like them. One that's not on here because I've never actually heard, they continue to come up, is Blinking Underdogs. And that is the Christian ska band that Oscar Isaac of Star Wars and Moon Knight and all the other movies that he's been in. That's the Christian ska band he was in. I think you can find stuff, but
People post pictures of
Yes.
them all the time just because of Oscar Isaac. It's always a meme floating around the internet. Like, did you guys know that Oscar Isaac was in a ska band? Yeah.
Yep.
I guess he was in multiple ska bands, but that was one he was in. Yeah.
And then just a couple other that even since I threw this list out that I've kind of discovered or like made larger inroads into is Short for Robert, Mayweather. Again, these are ones that I've more recently found. Sleepwalkers is one that I found through an old college friend. He's like, oh, my buddy was in a Christian ska band. And you talk about streaming services, I'll throw one more at you. Their stuff is only available on SoundCloud. So there's one more service that you have to go to find them.
No.
And then I'm going to call out the Minneapolis local ska band that we had, Christian ska band, is called Bus Empty. And DJ will occasionally listen to the show. I hope he listens to this one. His daughter plays soccer with my daughter through a homeschool soccer team. So if DJ is listening, I'm going to give the shout out to Bus Empty. They had the joke we did make occasionally about them is, yes, the bus is empty because everyone is on stage, because they had like at least 10 members. They had a tuba player at one point. They really, really packed the stage. But there you go. That's Bus Empty. I didn't feel like I would include them because I'm pretty sure nobody heard of them. I did see them on your list, Todd, when you sent over that one. So there you go. Bus Empty was the Minneapolis local.
Are they on any streaming services?
No, Bus Empty never. I think they never put anything out, which is unfortunate.
Kickstarter DJ.
And not to like ruffle your feathers, Caleb. Do you want to talk about how much you hate Bunch of Believers?
I'm gonna go there next. So I'm gonna do one more thing, and then I want to get into you guys' like your rankings and why bands are important to you. I got three more.
Okay.
Deluxe Tone Rockets. I didn't include them. They sometimes get included. I don't include them because I feel like they're just. I don't know why. Their second album is really just more rockabilly than anything else. They're fine. They've never hit me well, but I know they sometimes get included. I don't because of, I don't know, whatever reason. Children 18-3 is another one that they really, in my opinion, yes, they started as a ska band, but they're not. They're a punk band because they ditched they ditched the horn players before they ever put out anything. And again, that's another Minnesota band, so a little bit of a feeling towards them. Bunch of Believers. I didn't include them because I hate them. Yes, I will say it. I hate them. This is the one thing where I'm not going to be liberal and nice because they're an industry plant. There is, and I'm going to forget the name of the punk band because there's a punk band from the 80s, 90s that was literally these guys went into the studio to make fun of punk music and they put out a punk CD and then people liked it. And they were like, well, I guess we'll travel under this name for a while. This is the exact same thing they did with ska is they went into the studio as a joke to make fun of it. And then the record company was like, well, hey, we can maybe actually sell these. So they started selling them. So I will say it. I reject Bunch of Believers because they were making fun of it so they can fall off a cliff. There you go. That's as nice as I can be.
That's fair, but ska is making fun of ska all the time.
No. There's a difference between
this is different.
Yeah, they went in to be a parody.
Who was in Bunch of Believers?
I can look it up. Hang on.
Matt Merginsky, Reese Roper, Joe Yerke.
All right, so here it is. A founding member of One Bad Pig, Paul Q. Peck, whatever you say it. He had fun writing and recording a couple albums under the name Bunch of Believers. And I don't believe that he had fun doing it. That's fine. He can. But One Bad Pig literally was like a punk parody band. Like he did it to kind of make fun of punk music. But then it ended up being successful. So then he was kind of like, well, no, I'm kind of into it. So it was meant to be like comedic and all those things. But for me, it's not. I do not accept it as part of my scene because I don't like the idea that like I have too much of an association with One Bad Pig. And I know some people turned out to be like, oh yeah, we kind of like them. But like they went in as a parody and I cannot help but see this as a bit of the same thing. So that is my rejection of Bunch of Believers. I'll die on this.
I don't know him, so but the Twitterati, you got some followers on there that have some opinions. So.
I'm sure people would disagree with me. That's fine. There you go. That's my Bunch of Believers take. Okay.
Down the steps and to the right. Lucked in was number the night. Step on up with narrow in sight. From the middle one to three the right. Out for the handshake, up for the call. Watch and see those British fall. Who is he? Who is he? Who is he? What does he do?
Can you explain the methodology of your study, Caleb? Because I don't agree.
Yeah, no, let's talk results. Let's dive into some results here. Yes, the methodology is I threw out a random survey on Twitter thinking, hey, I wonder if anybody will respond to this, and people did. And I mentioned before. So one of the things that I do want to call out here is I messed up. I made a typo because that is what I'm best at. And the October Light got slighted on here because it's
OC Supertones Tober Light.
I totally messed up. And then Mojo and the October Light also got slighted. So Philip, you had mentioned before kind of your connection with the October Light. I do want to start there. And then I have a couple questions about these results. But like, you obviously became friends with them, but it's more than that. So I want to give you a chance, especially because they kind of didn't get included in my survey, about why you think they are a great band. Just a chance to kind of sing their praises.
Yeah, and in the words of Kelly Kapoor, yes, I have some questions. First of all, how dare you?
I know, I failed.
No, this is great, and what you're doing for the 7 listeners of Christian ska music is wonderful. Quick. I think I mentioned it earlier on this very podcast about going to Croatia as an exchange student and, seeing a kid, a freshman. I graduated high school and then I went over there, took a second senior year. And there was like a freshman or sophomore with a OC Supertones shirt. And Croatia at the time was just coming out of the war. I don't know if you know anything about like Bosnia and Croatia, former Yugoslavia, what all they went through, but he was excited to have a fellow Christian, Protestant Christian. I had just seen the Supertones in concert, and so we became friends quickly. He was going to a music school over there that was just a really, really high quality, classical guitar where you're playing like, both hands on the guitar. Everybody there very musically inclined. And so he and his brothers and some friends were in a group called Seeker's Planet, which I also didn't see on this list.
Sorry.
And so I became the token American in that band because I played a number of instruments and I sang. I was okay, right? I was goofy and not great and not like concert ready.
Yeah.
They played some big shows too. I mean, like thousands and thousands of people. If you go to a festival, even if people aren't coming to see you, if you're on the stage, they're there, and so I became friends with them and then just really appreciated their music. But they came to the States and they toured on the Insiders Farewell Tour. They have Reese Roper's on one of their albums. They have the whole album with Mojo and the October Light, who's Matt Bergenski from the Supertones. So they're connected in the ska world, and they're just really good, fun, and interesting guys.
Yep.
So they get my vote for number one, with apologies to all the bands that are better than them.
They were definitely talked about a lot on the Ska for Christ forum, and I don't remember her name or anything, but if she's still around, I hope she's well. There was one girl from Croatia, like, who was a regular on the message board, who was a big fan. So yeah, I definitely have heard of them. I never really listened to them a lot, but yeah.
Give them a shot, Todd.
I'll have to listen to them.
Yeah.
And you, dear listener, who's out there listening, you made it this far in the podcast. You should listen to October Light or Seeker's Planet, but maybe not Seeker's Planet, but definitely October Light.
And they're still out there doing it. I recently watched they were at a festival. You were mentioning they were at a festival, some Christian music festival in Europe, and it was in 2023, and it was a great set. It's a nice recording of it. So if you I think it's on their YouTube channel. If you look up October Light, their YouTube channel's got some stuff, and it's a great little set. So they're still out there doing it and still promoting the ska in Europe. And I really do. I think they're one that is, because of the timing of it, may have been missed by a lot of Americans who were into the Christian ska scene. So yes, I think they are a big one to promote as well.
I thought that Americans did listen to them, but because of your typo, they just didn't get,
It's possible I am to blame. I would not be surprised.
The things that see me do, and now they seem so far removed. Sometimes I hang my head like the Walking Dead when I dare to ask myself, what would Jesus really do? He was alive in us. Jesus loves the hurting. Reaching hands out to the helpless, fill the pockets of the poor, giving mercy to the sinner, forgiving a little more, touching those untouchable, healing the leper sore, loving those unlovable.
So my methodology was bad. I'm not going to lie. It was throw out 30 names and you should vote on them. There's a whole bunch of typos. This is going to be a little boring. I'm going to go through a couple of these. I'm just going to mention a couple of the things, and then I want to just have a discussion about the results. So Five Iron Frenzy came in with the most first place votes with 20. The second most, was the Insiders. They had 11 second place votes. nobody else got more than 2 first place votes. So I do question the results, even though I am a diehard Five Iron Frenzy fan. So Five Iron had 20. The Supertones only had 2. That was the only other bands really to get. The Insiders got a first place vote. The Dingies got one. Squad 5-O's first 2 albums got one, and that was pretty much it. The Insiders got 11 second place votes, so I kind of put them in the second place spot, and the Supertones got 12 third place votes. So it still did revolve around those big 3. The W's got 7 fourth place votes, and you can kind of see it did very much follow kind of that trend, those getting the most results. And I know this was not a perfect survey, but so that's kind of some of the things that got up there.
I like the way you just sort of described your algorithmic way of figuring this out. Because, at first, and that's actually a joke from a completely unrelated podcast. It's a cyclocross podcast called Cyclocross Radio, where they do like a heat check of cyclocross racers. And he always just jokes about how he has like this intricate algorithm, when really it's just sort of like, hey, they're doing pretty well. I think I'll rank them here. But, because at first I thought you were just going off of just like how many times a band got ranked first. And I was like, I think there is a better way. Like you could do like a ranked system where like a first place earns you this many points, a second place this many. And like maybe we could come up with like a finer grained, like, but also there's only, how many people voted in this thing? 20, 30, 40?
No, not even that many. I mean, really, there was probably less than 30 that actually voted. And the number of people that filled out the whole thing died off. Like, you can see very few people went past.
I tried to vote on everything. I think I tried to vote on, like, all the bands. But, like, there's a bunch just at the end because I'm like, I have no idea. So they just get put down at the bottom.
Exactly.
Like, okay. No, I think you did a good job, Caleb.
Todd, you know all the bands. Like I am pretty far into farther into the Christian Ska universe than like most people I know. And I'm looking at this list. I'm like, Adam Bender. Like with no disrespect to the Adam Bender, the Adam Benderati out there, right? Like I don't know who they are, right?
I mean, I think I am a unique individual. I agree that my knowledge of this is higher than the average person.
Don't judge. I've never listened to Big Dog Small Sense, and you guys were like raving about him. I'm like,
I love Big Dog.
I mean, be on this podcast.
So this, it might, maybe I should just mention this now. I have definitely early on. I bristled at the fact that Caleb appointed himself like the king of Christian ska on the internet because I felt that I really deserved that title more. So there were times I thought that was sort of presumptuous of him. But
big time.
I think
big time presumptuous.
I think he is willing to put in more work at this time. So I'm like, that's not, I don't need to fight about it.
You're passing the torch. He said
exactly.
He's
like,
five iron. He said he's a 5 iron historian. You're like a Christian ska historian, right?
There you go. Maybe that can. But I think in his Twitter bio, he calls himself like Grand Defender of Christian ska.
No, it's the caretaker of Christian ska. That's how I describe myself.
So, it's cute.
Oh man. This is like the fight you're talking about at the beginning of the episode between like the branches of ska, like, But
no, we get along very well. I just thought that was sort of funny because you're right. A lot of people have probably not heard of many of these bands.
Yeah.
I am also not really surprised. I mean, like other than Caleb and me, I almost doubt that anybody had heard of Seven who took part in this poll, for example.
I agree. Yeah.
Like Ethan Luck, though, people love Ethan Luck. Everybody loves Ethan Luck.
Yeah.
Everybody loves that man. I hope. If you don't, you're a horrible person.
Yeah. Ethan Luck should get all the accolades that are coming his way. Like, and several more.
I saw him perform with the Supertones. That's I don't know if this is not pertinent. Well, up until this year, Now I think I've seen Five Iron more because I've seen them 3 times this year. But up until then, I think I had actually seen the Supertones more than I had seen Five Iron. Because it seemed like I think the Supertones just toured more. Like I think they were in like Iowa and Nebraska more than any of than like either the Insiders or Five Iron did. But so like literally I would go to like Des Moines and see them playing at a church. Like, like the Supertones were everywhere. So like it was easy to go see the Supertones a lot at that time.
I saw Ethan Luck with the Supertones too, and I listened. I had not listened to any of his solo stuff until, again, Caleb. Thank you, the caretaker of Christian ska and music in general. So take that, Todd.
Is is Mojo and the Info, is that ska? Have you ever listened to Mojo and the Info, Caleb?
So
that one album that Mojo put out?
That's October Light. That's October Light. The Info is October Light.
Well, there you go. I like that. I didn't even know that. So I enjoyed that. There you go.
Yeah. So they're on there multiple times.
I feel like I'm one of few people who has like listened to that album many, many times. Yeah.
If you were about to bash them, you got to backtrack now, knowing what you know about me. Huh?
No, I've literally listened to it many times. Yeah. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. I mean, I really do. I'm not just saying that. I really think that the Mojo and the Info album is great, but it's not.
I just think it's something that not a lot of people know about. Like if you pulled CCM Twitter right now and asked how many people have listened to this album, I bet the number is very low.
Like you get 5.
And I think it should be higher. Yeah.
You get the click from my Trivia on a Stick account. You get the click from my personal account.
Tell me, how does that feel? Turn back the death, get passionate, get alive. Shut your TV set, take another breath and get alive. It isn't over yet, you can rise from death and get alive.
Do you guys, when Five Iron beat Rich Mullins a couple of years ago, I don't know if you guys were involved in any of this, but man, when they were saying about people, I just want to say that I only voted from one account. All right. I just, on the air, I want everybody to know I have 2 Twitter accounts. I only voted from one. So,
yeah,
but I did vote for Five Iron.
Yeah, people. I mean, I feel like we're just beating a dead horse at this point, but people were heated.
Yes.
That first year of CCM Twitter tournament when, God's chosen band, Five Iron Frenzy, won the tournament. People were very upset. Yeah. Forever. Like that can never be taken away. The first ever CCM Twitter tournament. Who won? Five Iron Frenzy.
Yep.
God's chosen. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about Five Iron for a second? For me, Five Iron, like we said, Five Iron, Supertones, Insiders. They're the big 3, right? We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, Five Iron to me opened my eyes to a lot. Like, that they were, I think it was the episode, I can't remember if it was the episode that you did, Caleb, with Phil Little. Is that right? Yeah. I think he was on the relocation episode. But you talked and I can't remember if it was this episode or if it was the Pedro the Lion episode, where you talked about how deconstruction has become a big thing within the Christian circles and Christianity. And that he's like, well, for me, like, David Bazan and I had already gone through it. Like,
right.
That I thought that whole sequence was fantastic. And I thought the same thing. Like, I had a lot of friends who left Pedro the Lion and David Bazan because, the lyrics on that album, where he said you wouldn't expect the Holy Spirit to speak that way, right? Yeah. But I kind of went through the same thing with Five Iron Frenzy, where they were talking about, Banner Year or Crazy Horse or the atrocities committed against Native Americans, where you're not hearing that in Christian music. But I felt like it's a very Christian theme for who Christ was speaking out in favor of or against, that it wasn't you would hear punk bands speaking to these things in the secular world, and Five Iron was doing this in the Christian world, and I just, I loved it.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons that, like, one of the big surprises from the results was that they were so overwhelmingly first place. Like, they ended up like with 20 of the first place votes, where if you would have done this back then, like the Supertones, I think would have cleaned up if you do this exact tournament.
I
Or you
agree.
do this exact format back in like the 90s. And I think that's one of those things that that's what's made them so endearing, is that they started talking about those things, and those things became personal to so many of us. Like, they became like not just a song that we sung, but like, I'm gonna go read on Wounded on Bended Knee, or I think that's the name of the book that's about some of those things. And like, I think it became
my heart, right? Bury my heart at Wounded
yeah,
Knee.
that's it. Yeah. And I just feel like it became more than just a band. It became so much because they did have such a broader discussion and more open about those things. And I think that is why they've catapulted up above the Supertones.
And I was too young for it too. Like, I didn't know, like, when he in the Giants song where he says this house is haunted by the ghost of Adam Smith, I had no idea who Adam Smith was, when I first listened to it. And then you go back and you listen, you're like, oh, like, and again, like, it's tough to not get political when you talk about Five Iron Frenzy, because they're such a political band, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if this is just something that just occurred to me. I wonder if that is part of, like, Reese, and I'm assuming maybe other members of Five Iron, but Reese's love of Rich Mullins, because Rich Mullins also had like a real heart for like the plight of Native Americans, like like that was also part of his like ministry. So I wonder if that's part of the connection there. But anyway,
yeah.
Like there's other things to like about Rich Mullins, but I just sort of realized that there is that common thread between the two.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about him.
Yeah, like he did some like teaching, or like he did some sort of basically ministry on like Native American, like on reservations. Yeah.
Ironically, that came up on my Throwing Copper episode, because the guy who guested on that show, his name is Kevin. He was on my show last week as well. He was it was an area he lived in Texas, and that's where Rich Mullins was living with Native people and doing ministry specifically to them when he wasn't doing music stuff. So it was I think it was something that was really important to him as well. So
yeah. So Five Iron's a kind of different edgy to me, right? Like the Supertones, the Supertones were edgy too. Like they had the Light My Cigarette with $100 bill, right? Like, and that, I don't think that would have played well in the Christian bookstores, but the edge of Five Iron was a different type of edgy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true. Like they both, like the two examples you just mentioned, like both criticize like laissez-faire capitalism, but like it definitely seems to be much more common of a theme in Five Iron Frenzy than, the Supertones they definitely talk about it like in a song,
right.
But it's definitely like Five Iron seems much more consistently like that is this like social, and this is now like a politically loaded term, like this like social justice stuff, right? Like this, like Five Iron has an eye to like, and hey, the last 2 times I've gone to Denver to see Five Iron, guess what? I've experienced the being in downtown Denver and seeing the homeless people and whatnot. Like that's not a situation that seems to have changed much in the last 20 some years. Like, so I see like, what they're saying in these songs, like where 0 meets 15. I've literally, gone and like gotten food for some homeless guys on that like particular corner that they're talking about. Like, so that's definitely part of Five Iron that I think is like deeply embedded in their message.
you guys know about the Scum of the Earth Church?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know of the Scum of
I
the
know.
Earth
I don't know many details. I know of it. Like, yeah, if you say that, I'm like, oh yes, I can associate that with people from Five Iron Frenzy. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's still going, I believe. I do think the last Leonore doesn't work there anymore. She worked.
Okay.
She worked there until I want to say 2 years ago. I think this is. I think it's public knowledge. And Leonore, if you actually listen to this and I've misspoke, tell me to take it down. I will re-edit the whole show and take it out. But she was involved up until a couple of years ago. I don't know who the pastor is anymore, but it was still going strong. I know when we went to the reunion show in 2012, so they did the Kickstarter. I was one of the people who got tickets for that reunion show in Denver a year later. A bunch of people went to Scum of the Earth the next day because the show was on a Saturday night. So it was still going strong then. I think it still is going strong. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's why she's not working there anymore. But there was even people who were involved from the band still up until the last couple of years. So
I know that she has said in other interviews and things that like recently that, and I don't know if it's still current, because things change day to day, but like that she was doing like chaplaincy in a like women's correctional facility. Like,
yeah, that's
as a
what she's doing
ministry
now.
now.
So yeah. So I think it's still going. It's a thing that they started, and I think they're also spread out now too. I think because only 5 of them are in Colorado anymore. A lot of them are spread out. So yeah.
That is another crazy. Nobody mentioned this. We haven't talked about this, but it's a crazy thing about ska bands. There are so many members. It's tough to be in a band and to keep the band going and to be successful and to like you've got shows and you're trying to write music and you're trying to perform, but to have a band of like 4 people is tough. And then you think 5 people, and then you think 6 people, and then you think 7 people, and you got like once you get the horn section, like it is. To be that tight knit, you have to. I think maybe that's another reason that Christian bands are, like Christian ska bands are, possibly successful, is they have that.
Well, yeah, I guess to bring it maybe full circle here. Real Big Fish has up until when they still were doing concerts a few years ago, 1 original member.
Yeah.
I just saw Goldfinger, and I think they have 2 original members, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't, there is, it is rare for such a big band to be, so intact this far on.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's an interesting thing about the Dingies is that the Dingies had kind of this back and forth jumping, and then all of a sudden it kind of became this 4 core group. And I mentioned it on the Sundown to Midnight show. I feel like the Dingies at this point are kind of like a music collective. Like there's like six or 8 people who are kind of involved, and they kind of rotate in and rotate through, like depending on what the project is and who's available. It's sometimes it's Ethan Luck on drums, sometimes it's somebody else, sometimes it's always the same guy. Bean's always on bass, and Peg's always involved. But the other members seem to kind of float in and out depending on who's available. And so I think that's kind of an interesting thing about the Dingies. And I think that's another, you talk about why Five Iron, I think, has elevated itself and kind of taken over the Supertones. I think the fact that it's 9 members ever, I think that's another endearing part of it. It is part of their identity that they've only had 9 members all these years later, that they basically have been a solid unit, which is, I think, almost unheard of in any ska band. The idea that you've had the same basic 9 members, and Keith left on good terms. Scott, when he left the band, he left on good terms. It wasn't this huge thing. It was, they left on good terms and they're back. And Keith just didn't want to be a part of the reunion because he's in 2 bands with his wife, and that was more of a priority for him. And that makes perfect sense. So
I was going to, like you said, how it's, even to me personally, like I definitely felt a shift, because you talked about how the Supertones would have been like at the top of this list at one point. And, this is, we don't need to get into, but it's connected to so many of the things that we've talked about. Like there was a point when I definitely would have said like, oh, Supertones are great or whatever. And I will still occasionally listen to them, but I regularly listen to Five Iron Frenzy, and I occasionally listen to the Insiders. But I listen to Five Iron Frenzy like very regularly. So like, heck, I've got that vinyl box set sitting over here on a shelf right now. Like there's commitment there that I just never had to the Supertones, basically, I guess. I have a little more commitment to the Insiders because that's like a first love sort of thing. Literally, they were like the ska band that got me into ska. So like, no matter what changes, I'll probably always be like, they have a special spot in my heart, the Insiders, just for that reason.
Well, you're my sister, and you're my brother. United together, we got our father. No division can separate us. United to a goal, but here to create us. Cause we get together and fight, 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 fight. All the evil that surrounds us, and we'll never lose. Because we are you. We are money, we are you. We know it's right, we are you. Got it in the mind.
I don't know if if secular ska bands do this, but like there's a lot of crossover within the Christian ska world too. Like
Yep.
at least for me, when I was with October Light, they were covering Insiders, they covered Supertones, they covered Five Iron Frenzy songs. I mean, Five Iron Frenzy, the horn section parts are like a little higher. They're like real good. But do secular bands, they do that too, right? Like, does everybody do that?
I think there's a lot of like actually even crossover in the bands. Like there's like people who kind of jump ship and will be like, well, I'm going to go do with this band and do this with this
That's just
band.
Ethan Luck, right?
He has been in a handful of these, I will say.
There's definitely, like, at least with horn players, there's definitely, I think, been many horn players who have been in many, like, secular, like, mainstream ska bands. Like, yeah, like, I think that happens a lot. I don't know about other players, but yeah.
I think there is because it is I'll say it, it's a malign genre. I think there is a lot of kind of respect that kind of it becomes a bit of a fraternity in that they do want to kind of protect each other, and there is a lot of like respect for each other. And I think especially the people who've taken it very, very seriously, like everybody who's kind of connected to Mike Park. I kind of see Mike Park as the original godfather of the third wave 90s ska. I kind of see him as that. And I think he's kind of almost passed the torch down to Jeff Rosenstock, even though Jeff Rosenstock isn't really doing ska primarily. There is kind of this like passing of the torch, and they kind of do seem to look out for each other. And they've kind of brought in, gonna mess up his name, I want to say Dan from MU330, and like he's kind of now involved in their projects. And there's kind of this, I think there's more of that than like actually covering each other's songs, but there is this kind of seems to be this love of each other and kind of like trying to find places for like, hey, I need somebody to do this on this album. You want to come and get paid a little and also, keep on going. So I think there's a lot of that going on. And I think there's a lot of throwback. There's been a lot recently to the two-tone stuff. I've seen a couple bands recently, and a lot of bands have started like covering a special song to close out a set. And I don't think that's anything that's new or unique. I think that's kind of always been there. I see a lot of bands doing that, but I've seen that a lot more recently, where it's just kind of cool to kind of call back to that 70s two-tone stuff. So.
Every dawn to this night, destiny lies waiting with the furies by his side. So the clash of arms. I wanna be heard so loud and clean, violent till I fall again. I'm gonna wage war, and this is now battle of the Dorian. I wanna be heard so loud and clean, violent till I fall again. I'm gonna wage war, and this is now battle of the Dorian.
Okay, so I'm having way too much fun, but we've hit the 2-hour-ish mark. We're kind of closing in on that. I do want to hear kind of where you guys would rank some of these. You're back to that original question in February that I threw out there. And we're not going to go through all 30. That's just, we don't have time for that. And that'd probably get a little dull. But I do kind of want to hear kind of what you guys would put, top 5, top 10, wherever you fall in there, however much of your list you would like to hear. And if there's any ones that you feel like you really need to call out. So Philip, how about you kick us off, kind of, if you were going to rank your top couple of these, where would you start and why? If there's something you want to say about one of these bands, feel free to, say that as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I do want to say we're closing in on 2 a.m. here. So thanks for starting.
So sorry.
You can blame me for being out on a bike ride at 10 o'clock at night. That put us back by like 40 minutes or so from the original plan.
Man, it's worth it. So thanks again. Again, thank you for letting me join in. I would say my number one is Five Iron Frenzy, and I think we've talked about them enough here that you know why.
Yeah.
My number two is October Light. Maybe for personal reasons, I don't think they got the airplay in the United States that they deserved. But they are very, very talented, a very fun band, and just great guys. Supertones, Insiders, W's.
Okay.
I like Ethan Luck, of course. Anything with Ethan Luck, it's great. But you know, I'm not going to go into any deep dives with like the Wagoobies and the Skankin Swirls, you know. Like,
Yeah.
you guys are gonna come up with some. You got to listen to the Wagoobies, right? So I'm not breaking any new ground here. I'll leave that to you two.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear the October Light get the call out, and if we haven't made it clear, I totally agree. I think they're ones that got overlooked and are absolutely worth checking out. They've just got a lot of variety too. Their last album, I'll mention that specifically. I'm going to end the show with Singer Songbook by the Insiders because I love that it has the big three on that.
I love that song.
But the October Light's done that because they did the album with Mojo. They toured with the Insiders and they got Reese on their last album that came out in 2019. They've hit the ska Christian ska trifecta. I don't think there's too many other bands that have, which I think is awesome. So yeah.
They got a Christian ska turkey.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think it's great. So awesome.
Have you ever held it down what this life is all about? Ask the question of this thing is in front too much. Do you really wanna know? Or are you a little scared? Cause the place that God is not exactly what you haven't been. Well, what should I hold to and what should I do? How do I know if anything's true? I'm somewhere in between Canaan and Egypt, a place called the Wilderness.
Todd, how about you? You walk us through kind of some of your top ones. Give us through some of the ones that you want to call out and highlight.
Okay. I will try to be brief, but as you might have told from earlier, it's difficult for me. Number one, Five Iron Frenzy, greatest band that has ever walked the face of the earth, of any genre, in any time period. So, main things I love about Five Iron Frenzy. So, I've talked about this many times, and maybe now that just earlier this week I became licensed as a registered nurse, I will have time to focus on this. I want to write an academic paper on themes from Soren Kierkegaard found in Five Iron Frenzy. Because if you don't know, my previous background is in philosophy. I've been a philosophy instructor at a university before making the obvious switch to the medical field. So, the themes that are important. So if I never write this paper, at least this is out there. Five Iron Frenzy, as well as Soren Kierkegaard, everybody's favorite 19th century Danish thinker, has a Christian attack upon Christendom. That's how Kierkegaard described it. That basically there is this society that's calling itself Christian that, you know, has all the churches and everything, but that Kierkegaard saw himself as being within Christianity, but calling out problems within the church around him. And I think Five Iron Frenzy did a whole lot of that and still continues to. Also, the general idea of addressing himself to the specific individual. Kierkegaard always saw himself as communicating with a bunch of individuals rather than the crowd. And I think that Five Iron Frenzy also has a lot of that going on, that they are addressing, or specifically maybe Reese writing most of the lyrics, addressing himself to the individual and not to like the general crowd of people. Third, just a general importance on being authentic, which I think is sort of obvious. And four, quixoticism. Being of or similar to Don Quixote. Kierkegaard, a big fan of Don Quixote, basically being early like existentialist works, or at least having existentialist themes. Definitely see some of the same stuff in Five Iron Frenzy. You bring the bombs, I'm bringing ice cream. These ideas that like, look, I might not be able to physically or practically do something, but I'm going to go into this with like my moral character, basically, is a theme from Kierkegaard that's also found in Five Iron Frenzy. So if you need to delete this, that's fine. But I wanted to put that out there into the ether in case I never actually write this paper I've talked about for years now. So that's why Five Iron Frenzy is the best.
Can we just time out and just say we could have led with this, Todd? That is some great stuff, and I wish we would have brought that up early on. That is some deep and wonderful insights there.
Well, thank you.
That is fantastic.
I just got done with nursing school, so now I'm like, hey, I might have the time to write this paper I've talked about for the last couple of years. So it might happen. I will let you all know. Because I'll definitely let Caleb know, and he can let the other like 5 people who are into Christian ska know. Also, though, Josh, Josh Baylog from CCM Twitter fame, he has also told me he really wants to read this paper. So there's at least 2 people out there who want to read it.
If you promote that this paper is on its way, there are going to be people who are interested in reading it. I think it sounds
good.
Genius, man. Genius.
I think I will start working on it. I have a little outline. That's where I got those 4 points. I had to pull up that document so I could remember my 4 main points that I'm planning to put into this paper. So yes, Five Iron Frenzy, the best. I think I put the Insiders as second, because, as I've said before, they were my first love. For maybe over a decade, I told people they were my favorite band. Sometimes I don't know if I was really being serious, because I think, but that was just my thing. If you ask my favorite band, I'd say the Insiders, because they were the first. Then I think I might have put the Supertones. I really don't remember my list, but right now I feel like Supertones, just because of, as far as I know, they were the most popular, at least within the Christian circles. I felt like I knew more people who were outside of Christian circles, though, who knew of Five Iron Frenzy. So that was always, even at that time, something I had in mind, was like they were each popular, but in a different way. And then, and though it looks like this is also pretty close to where Caleb has them, Buck. Building Up Christ's Kingdom, Buck. Though they might have not liked being called ska, I did find, because I was also a band nerd, as mentioned earlier, I had friends, including one of my buddies who was really into like metal and stuff and new metal, but that was the one of the Christian ska bands that he would actually like have musical respect for. Like he really, when I had him listen to all of them, he actually felt like Buck maybe had some of the best music. So that always sort of like, I was like, oh, maybe there's something to that. Maybe, Buck, they have some chops. So I'll just say some honorable mentions quick. Really love Big Dog Small Fence, as I mentioned earlier. I actually really like Tasty Snacks. I see it almost at the bottom of Caleb's list.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed Tasty Snacks. You gotta run, Joseph, run. Yeah, you gotta get away. The girl's got your clothes, but you know that you can't stay. And, just like riding around in the back of an ice cream truck for some reason. Great music video. So I loved the Snacks, man. And I think I have to say something about Seven, since I was the one who brought them to Caleb's attention. Yeah, they were a local Lincoln, Nebraska Christian ska / swing band. So maybe it would almost make you think more of like the W's in style. And I saw them play at my church. And, later there was almost this like, and not to have the wrong association, but almost like a Footloose situation. We got a different pastor and he did not believe in dancing. So suddenly all those concerts could not happen after we got a new pastor in town at my church. So, but my cool pastor, Steve Richard, if you're out there, he's no longer a pastor anymore, but he's still around, living up in Wyoming. Thank you for letting us have rock concerts at church. See, I think that's my piece. I'll leave it there. There's things I could say about other bands here, but those are the big ones. Oh, also, and I knew Send Out Scuds. The trombonist from Send Out Scuds was the guy who was actually trying to help me put together a compilation album back in the mid 2000s, the mid aughts. Dustin, if you're out there, if you happen to listen to this, you're really weird. And you make me uncomfortable. But yeah, anyway, he was the first person other than myself to post on the Ska for Christ message board back in the early 2000s, and he was a big part of it the whole time through. He's a big Christian ska guy, or at least he was then. So maybe he's out there somewhere. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
While casting out their nets, see the figure on the shore, speaks his words like plain men sing. His hands they still have holes in them. Glory to the King. Can you hear the bells are ringing far, far away? Can you hear the voices singing far, far away?
Okay, well, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do 15ish because it's my show. I will try and go fast because I don't want to make you guys sit through this, but
You don't
I
have to worry about us. You have to worry about your audience. They're who matters.
Also, I really like Flight 180, by the way. I forgot about them, but I like them too.
see that's a funny one. They got like a number 1 vote. That was one of the, or they got like an into the top 3. That was one
Really?
I never connected with them, but that
I
was
had
one
a
of the
couple of their
outliers.
albums.
Yeah.
The main song I think of is the one about like an ice cream sundae or whatever. I don't know which album that was off of, but yeah.
I never connected with them. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
all right. So I'm gonna start with. There's kind of a group of them towards the bottom. I do want to call it "Sounds Like Chicken." I know it's a crappy name for a band, but they're from Australia and they've got a couple really. They put out a couple albums, and they've got a couple. It's a song I'm going to include. There's some really good stuff in there. They're kind of weird. But they definitely were good. And then Dime Store Heist, Adam Bender, Blood in the Water. Those kind of all meshed together with me. I think they all came from the Ska Lives compilation. So that's where those fall for me. And then a Billion Ernies is kind of right in there. I have them in October Light right around the same spot. October Light probably goes. I probably have listened to a lot more October Light, so they should probably be above a Billion Ernies. But a Billion Ernies I really like just because of that ska core. I like they're kind of weird. They don't fit in with a lot of these other ones, so I really like those. So those are kind of in there. And then October Light were there, and right next to them is Mojo on the October Light. I really love that album. It's Get Alive is on that album. Chemical Reaction is on that album. There's a couple other really great songs. It's only 10 songs, but I really like it. They were a really good mix, in my opinion, for Mojo. I think they let him kind of do some different things that were outside of the supertones. And it's a really solid album. I think it's one of the more overlooked album. And that's different than the Mojo and the Info. There is one that's actually Mojo and the October Light. There's two different things going on there. And I really do like that Mojo and the October Light. So that sneaks into kind of my top 10 and maybe even a little higher. The Ethan Lux solo album from 2018, I think is really great. I think he's putting out, whether that's Christian or not is up for debate. That's fine. I don't know if he would even classify it as that, but I really like him. And then the Squad 5-0's first 2 albums, I think are just really good. If I was really going to be a little more picky about my Christian ska, I'd throw those out. But those first 2 Squad 5-0 albums are something special in a lot of ways. They're so raw. There's so much energy. They're so poorly produced because they just don't sound good, but they're so great. So I'd throw all those out there. And again, that's me being very liberal with my ska critique or criteria. Okay, that was me blazing through those. Top 7. The W's make it into my top 7, partially because they're just so talented. I really think they were... I really wish they would have gone longer. It would have been interesting to see what they could have done, because I think the swing thing was dead, and I think they kind of found themselves in an awkward spot, and I wish they would have just gone with it and evolved and said, we're doing this now, whatever, and just gone with it, because I think they were really talented, and I think they went down that swing path and then maybe kind of got stuck and didn't know what to do, and it's kind of a bummer to me, because I think they have some very fun songs, and I think they were maybe the most talented set of musicians in all of this. That might be overstating it, but I think they might have been. So that's why the W's make it up there. because you're going to see from my top, I tend to go towards the ska punk stuff. Big Dog Small Fence, only one album, although they do have a small collection of free stuff on Bandcamp that is fun to find. So you can download that. I really like Big Dog Small Fence. I like that they've got a couple instrumental things on there. I like that they've got a little Latin flair because, again, like Todd mentioned, they're all from kind of that East LA, and a lot of them, if you look at pictures of them, clearly have a Hispanic background or culture. And the song LA, so these are going to get personal. The song LA, I had a friend in high school who he wasn't into music at all. And he loved that song. And we would drive around he was on my youth group podcast. His name is Mike. We would drive around in his old beat up car, and he didn't want to listen to any of our music because he just wasn't into it. But he would play that LA song by Big Dog Small Fence over and over again. And he loved that song. So growing up in LA, even though we were growing up in Woodbury, Minnesota, that's a song that means a lot to me because of Mike's connection to it. Buck is my number 5, and it's because I saw them so much. There was a 2-year stretch where I think I saw them like 6-7 times. I swear. Wow. They were coming through the Twin Cities all the time. I got to know them. I recently was talking with the bass player on Facebook. I found him. Their album, when they really went to the rock with horns, is what's it called? 2001 release. I can't believe it had One Wish on it. It had Silent Ruin. I think it's a really, really solid album, but I also like their first album that the self-titled is also really, really good.
Is something about business
as
or
usual.
Something?
Thank you.
Yeah, business as usual. Yeah.
So I love that album. It makes it into my top 150, and I just have a real personal connection to that album because I really did. Top 4, Supertones is number 4 for me. They do not make it into my top 3. I still, like I said earlier, I will defend them till I thought they were always authentic. I still listen to them a lot. Like if you look at my favorite ska lists, they are still all over that thing. I think Wilderness is one of my favorite songs ever. It's their best song in my opinion, and it's so great.
It's a great song.
Yeah, I really like the Supertones still to this day. But yeah, they fall in number 4. Number 3 is Insiders. Again, kind of a lot of the same things. Everybody knows them for what they are. I really think they got better as they went. Those last 2 albums are, I think, genuinely quality albums. That first one is a little raw. It's a little weird. It's all kind of all over the place. But those last 2 albums, and they're, again, I said I'm going to end the show with Singer Songbook. Their last album is really, really great. Although their Soundtrack to a Revolution, that's them, not the Inside, or not the Supertones. That album is absolutely fantastic. Again, 10 songs, right to the point. Not a bad song on it. Number 2, which is going to throw people off maybe a little, is the Dingies. I love the variety in them, that they're ska, they're punk, they're reggae, they're all over the place. The Dingies just continue to climb up. And I kind of have this ranked on like who I listen to the most. The Dingies have absolutely moved into that number 2 spot. I put on their stuff. Basically, the 2 bands that I've played in my car over the last year or 2 is basically the Dingies, 5 Iron Frenzy, and Me Without You. That's basically it. The 3 bands that I kind of rotate through CDs, and the Dingies have absolutely become one of my favorite bands. The Crucial Conspiracy is, I cannot believe how good that album is, and how it was so much later in life until I really discovered how amazing that album is. It is just an album that the second it gets done, I just want to start it all over again. So the Crucial Conspiracy by the Dingies is absolutely grown. It's in my top 20, probably all-time favorite albums, and they are absolutely killer. And then number 1, no surprise to anybody, 5 Iron Frenzy. I don't have as eloquent a response as Todd in the philosophy behind it, but I would say they are my heartbeat in a lot of ways. Like every time they put something out, I just find myself connected to it. And the way I would say it is, there are things that my heart has wanted to say, but I've never been smart enough to say it. And then 5 Iron will write a song about it. And I'm like, holy crap. That's how I think. I've never been able to articulate that. The song Anthem like resonates with me. This idea that like, I am thankful to be an American citizen and to live in America, but man alive, when we prize our American freedom over our Christian freedom, we are selling Jesus short. And it was something that like from day one, that first lines of Old West, that I have been in love with that band to a point that it's probably borderline crazy at times. but they are my heartbeat in a lot of ways. And so they are probably what draws me into Christian ska more than anything else is Five Iron Frenzy. That was way too much of me talking. This feels like me going back to the weekly show where I would just talk for an hour. So that's my top. That's how I break it down. That's why I love those bands. I could go on and on for about Five Iron Frenzy. At some point, I'm gonna have to find a show to do just about Five Iron. But yeah, there's my top 15-ish and why. That was way too much of me talking. Whew.
I think it was still quicker than mine.
No, probably not.
The mountain called Zion made my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. Then how could we sing out our Lord's song when our surroundings have become foreign? Sing it again now. How could we sing out our Lord's song when our surroundings have become foreign?
Awesome. Well, anything else that you guys want to add? Any other things that are on your mind about this topic?
I'm just thankful that you brought me on because Todd knows Christian ska. He's the protector. You're the caretaker. He's the protector. But
I mean, I feel like Caleb and I were like, a mother and a father. Which one's which? I don't know. We're the parents of Christian ska at this point. Or, I don't know if there's a better analogy, but no, Caleb definitely puts in the work. I'm like semi-retired from being like the Lord protector of Christian ska. But, also, I guess, I don't know if this is pertinent, but I am thankful that, CCM Twitter brought us together. As much as I generally despise Twitter and always have, we can all be thankful for CCM Twitter bringing us together. The tournaments, as much as they have brought like vitriol and stuff, but we can thank Eric, behind CCM Twitter for bringing us together, because otherwise, I might have found Caleb via like a Five Iron Frenzy Facebook group or something, but the way we actually ended up connecting is because of CCM Twitter. So thanks to Eric and anybody else who's really helped to, push the CCM Twitter thing for bringing us together.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good spot to end. This has gone on well long enough, which is, I can't even speak at this point. But I want to say thanks so much for you guys for taking. I've been wanting to do this show since February. Me and Todd almost had it worked out. We tried to get it done, and then something got in the way. We had to push it off. So Philip, I know you feel like you're not with us on this level, but having that third person to interact with and to bounce things off of and to bring your connection to October Light, I think is really, really adds to
that is great.
This discussion. And that's what I love about talking music people. There's these personal connections that you don't know about until you kind of hear somebody, you tell their story about why they love it. So I'm so thankful. Todd, this is you and I's second 2-hour show. So you and I clearly have got the gift of gab and can do this for endless amounts of time. But I just want to say thanks to you guys. So I do want to give you guys a chance to promote. I know especially Philip, you got a show that you do. So can you tell us a little bit about where people can find you online and your show? And then we'll do the same thing with Todd. So Philip, where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on Trivia on a Shtick as the show. It's just a trivia show. I would listen to Caleb's show first and more often than my show. But the Twitter stuff, give us a follow. I know like everybody promotes their podcasts on Twitter, and our Twitter handle is kind of all over the place. I think you do a really good job of being hyper focused on Christian music and music in general, Caleb. So I think people see Trivia on a Shtick, a podcast trivia handle, and they're like, okay, this is spam, which we almost never promote the show because like, who cares? If you're listening, Eric, I followed you, Eric, and I was invested in the 5 Iron Frenzy Rich Mullins stuff, and you didn't give me a follow back, and so I'm a little bitter about that because I'm a trivia podcast and nobody cares.
Well, I've been on the show. It's a fun show. We like listening around the house. My kids like to try and be able. Some of them we're out of our depths on some of the trivia questions. Some of them I was really impressed. I really impressed my kids with the movie ones, even though I'm not a big movie guy. But yeah, so it's a great show to listen to. So
yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Todd, where can people find you online and your podcast to be? No, well, you can promote that if you want.
There might come a podcast. So far I've almost made it to 40 and not started a podcast. So who knows? Maybe after my 40th birthday, I will get around to it. But no, the main place to find me on both Twitter, though I am not a big Twitter person, as I've made clear, I'm not a fan, and I never have been. It's just not really my thing. I basically just go on there because of my love of, Caleb and Eric and Josh and, now Phil, now that I know Phil, all the CCM Twitter people. That's really the main reason I use Twitter. So yeah, that's not the best place to find me, but hey, if you want to, you can follow me there. Like, I'm really a nobody. There's not anything interesting about me. But I do post a lot on Instagram. So if you're an Instagrammer, go to Instagram, and I am also Socrates on a bike there. So that's the handle, both places. Socrates, SocratesOnABike, Socrates on a bike, because that seems to describe pretty much the things that matter to me in life. I am a philosopher and I like cycling. And apparently I also like some other things like music. I've got like an MXPX shrine in the corner. So yeah, that's me. And yeah, there might be a podcast. The name, I've come up with a title for this possible podcast, and it is Sounds Unpleasant, because the idea is I'm going to be listening to things I don't like. So the Sounds Unpleasant podcast. And I like that that's actually like a play on words to me. Like, you could be saying, oh, that sounds unpleasant, or you could be talking about sounds which are unpleasant. So I like I like that play on words with the Sounds Unpleasant podcast. So Socrates on a bike, or just look for Todd Grassman. There's only like a couple of us in the whole U.S. as far as I can tell.
There's nobody with my last name, so it's awesome. Well, thanks guys so much. I In Defense of Ska just did their Christian Ska podcast about a month ago, so I'm glad we're getting our version out there, and we can represent the people who are.
We could take them, by the way.
I don't know. Adam
this comes down to a street fight.
Do you know what Adam does for a living? The co-host, the lead singer of Omnigon. He's like a professional, personal trainer. I don't think we could take him. I think. All right. Well, Philip's bringing some guns to the show. I'm not going to help.
I mean, I did jujitsu like a decade ago, so I have some fighting skills.
And I'm a pacifist I'm pacifist, so I'm not going to help.
Well,
yeah, Mennonite. Hey, so can I just ask you asked this, thank you for letting us promote our crappy podcasts, or in Todd's Kierkegaard and 5 Iron podcast that's coming out soon.
That might have to be a new podcast. Right. Yes.
Hey, what podcasts do you listen to? So you talked about In Defense of Ska. Do you listen? Should I be listening to that? Is that you talked about Church Jams Now? Is that the one that I should be listening to? Caleb, what are you bring podcasters on here all the time? All the time. There's a podcast. Everybody has a podcast, right? What should I listen to?
I think In Defense of Ska has some cool interviews. Every now and then I don't get through all of them because I just don't have the time. But it's got, they've done Leon Horseman on the show. They've had a couple other things here and there that I think have been really, really interesting. I don't make it through all of them because sometimes I'm just not as interested. I do think the Church Jams Now stuff is good. I listen to I don't listen to every episode, I'll be honest. Sorry, Kylan. But they just cover albums that I'm just not that interested in because I think they're a little younger than I was, and just stuff I'm not as interested. But I will put on. I've tried to get through some of the episodes too, where it's like, I've only briefly heard about this. And then I listen to Eric's show, Decent Christian Talk, that he puts out on YouTube. I find that pretty interesting to hear Eric talk about. He has AJ on a lot, and they will talk about, like, they did their favorite albums of each year of like the 2010s. So I find Eric's show to be interesting. I know the Jesus Freak Hideout show is I think is a lot of people really like that. I've only listened to a couple episodes here and there, but that's by Josh Baylog, and then Chase is on that show as well. So those are some of the other ones I listen to. To be real honest, I'm not a good podcast listener. I used to listen to I Fanboy was a comic book podcast that I used to listen to, but those are some ones that are up my alley. So
yeah, I listen to a ton of pods myself. Okay. I'm not that great of a listener because it's more like I bounce around. Like I'm subscribed to so many, and I might just go and be like, I want to listen to this one for a while. I can't add much to what Caleb just said, but I mean, I also like Church Jams. I'm a proud Patreon supporter of Church Jams now. Though I asked Kylan if they would talk about the recent Five Iron Frenzy / Mike Herrera song, When They Find You. Because I guess they actually, Leonore let them listen to it before it was released. They didn't release that, though. They didn't release their discussion of it. But I've asked them if they would release it as like a Patreon-only thing or something. Because I'm like, I have not heard any podcast really talk about that song. And I would like to hear someone, maybe Caleb can someday,
I give it
talk
a shot
about that song. I actually listen to Mike Herrera's podcast pretty regularly. Right, I do like, and it's just called the Mike Herrera Podcast. He was the singer from MXPX. And then I listen to a bunch of cycling podcasts, which you're probably not interested in. But as far as music, yeah, Church Jams now. I have listened to the Black Sheep podcast. That's Mason whatever and some other guy. It's also like they go through the history of like Tooth and Nail bands and stuff.
Off air, I can tell you some ones that I'll tell you not to listen to. Yeah. But I won't bag on them online or on air.
Well, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I do listen to your podcast, Caleb, and I'll start listening to you barely plugged your second podcast. You're podcasting all over the place now. So
I'll do it in the outro. I'll do an outro. After you guys, I'll let you guys go to bed, and then I'll do my outro. I'll plug it then.
I hope to someday talk to you about deconstruction, Caleb. So keep.
I will say the youth group one as a promo for it. The one thing I've said is we're trying really hard to not make it just a deconstruction podcast.
Not just the deconstruction.
We really
podcast.
want it to be like. My tagline for it has become like, whether you've been at the church you were raised at or you've left the faith, like both of them are valid experiences that I want to hear about. Because I think it's there's my friend Mike, who I just mentioned in the one about LA, like me and him probably disagree on some things, but hearing him talk about why he's still at the church he was raised, that he came into in high school, and how it became surrogate family for him, it makes it so clear why he really clings to that church so strongly. And it was really, really endearing for me to hear. And it really was like, man alive, we may feel differently about some things at this point. I may probably have gone down a little more of the deconstruction path than he has, but man alive, it makes a lot of sense why he would cling so tightly to it. And it was really valuable for me to hear. So we're trying hard not to be just a straight deconstruction podcast. We want to really hear why some people haven't deconstructed and have just stayed the course. So
as a general, because I know our timer's almost out, but as a general music podcast, Chris DeMakes a podcast. Chris DeMakes from Less Than Jake. He has a podcast and he often interviews other people from bands and stuff. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so. Reese has been on that one.
Yeah.
I love Borders and Boundaries. Borders and Boundaries is my favorite Less Than Jake album. I love the Swedish Meatballs line. All right. You can I didn't mean to there, but you can give me a list of your favorite podcasts and I'll check them out. So
there you go. Well, there's some of them. So awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And this has been in the works for a while. I'm so excited I'll be really excited to get this out. So yeah.
Thank you.
Always come and go, foul tea.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Album Anniversary podcast. I know we didn't talk about an album anniversary, but I can't say thanks again enough to Todd and Philip for joining me. I've been wanting to do this show for a while, like really been trying to get something planned around this, had this idea for a while. I'm so glad we got it done. I know it went really long. I know we lost a little of Philip's audio at the end. His headphones went out, and so he was kind of flying by the seat of his pants a little at the end there. So apologize for that. I know he got a little hard to hear in a couple spots, so apologies for that. But I can't say thanks enough for those guys for taking time out of their weeks to join me and stay up really, really late and talk. It was really, really great. I hope you go check their stuff out on Twitter and on Instagram, and check out Philip's podcast. It's a fun little listen, their trivia show that they do. Honestly, there was so much more I wanted to talk about that we didn't even get to. You know, things like the Israelites, a more traditional ska band that is probably never gotten a ton of recognition in the Christian world. They're easy to find. I think they're on a lot. They're on most streaming services. They're on Bandcamp. We just continue to find new and new ways to connect with this music. If you have questions about any of the bands that I mentioned, if you want to see the original list, I can find a way to throw it out there, and I can try and help find where you can, or help you find where you can get most of this stuff. One of the great news is as I was editing this, this is about a week before this comes out, as I'm recording this right now. The W's just got all of their stuff on streaming. Their 2 albums plus a song that was only ever released on the 5 Minute Walk compilation and a demo. And then their 3-song demo that they had before their first album came out. Some of that had been available on Bandcamp for a while, but now it's on Spotify. So if you're a streaming person, there's one more thing that is on streaming. And I think we keep on pushing to get these things on streaming. I know it's maybe a little bit of a headache for some of these bands, but I really do appreciate when it's on there. I don't have to worry about it a ton. I have all my music downloaded. I stream it through YouTube Music because it's my music, and I'm really thankful for that. But I'm glad when these bands get their stuff out there so they can get some of the recognition that they deserve. Because, like I said, I think so many of these bands are so important to me, and this is my scene. This is the music that I cling to the most in a lot of ways. And yes, I love punk rock. I love alternative rock. I love those things. I love just great classic albums, but this is the music that I return to so often, the ska and some of the punk stuff, a lot of the punk stuff as well. So I just am so thankful to see some of those bands get recognition. And honestly, I could talk about this forever. I will try and stop now. For well over 2 hours. So if you hung on to the end, which I can't imagine anybody actually did, if you did, high five to you, hashtag high five. You hung on till the end. If you're interested in joining this show to talk about an album, I don't know why you would be, but if you are, the easiest way to do it is probably to follow me on Twitter. If I'm looking for a guest, I will throw it out on Twitter, say, hey, this album's coming out, or the anniversary for this album's coming out next month. Who wants to talk to me about it? Some of them I already have kind of guests lined up or people I have in mind. But if I'm looking for a guest, that's probably the easiest way to do it. Also, if you're looking ahead and there's an album that's on your mind that you want to get on the calendar for, I'll do my best to accommodate as much as I can. I can't do every album. And, I don't want to, I just, this week, somebody had asked me about an album and I was like, it's not really on my calendar. Church Shams Now came out with an episode on it. And I'm, glad I don't have to compete with them. Kylan, if we could coordinate our schedules, that'd be really great because I can't compete with you guys. So, it'd be really great if you guys could do your thing and let me do my thing. I'm totally kidding. They're doing great work. I'm glad to see them doing their thing. You can find me on Twitter, of course, at Caleb the Spy. I'm also on Instagram, Caleb the Spy as well. It's just got underscores in between the words there. And you can always email me at calebthespypodcast@gmail.com. Obviously, let me know what you thought. What did you think about this show? What did you think about some of these bands? What are bands I missed? What are bands that should get more recognition? I'm sure there are more Christian ska bands out there that should get the praise they deserve. Please subscribe and share the podcast. If you're so inclined, leave a rating or review. I've heard it's the most effective way to spread the word about podcasts. If you enjoy this show, you might also enjoy the other show I do with my friend Scott. It's called I Survived Youth Group in the 90s. And it's not just a show where we reminisce and be really nostalgic about our 90s youth group experience, but we're trying to interview fellow 90s youth group kids and some 2000s and just kind of understand where they're at now, whether they're at the same church they were at 30 years ago or they've left the faith entirely. We just want to hear their story and kind of how that youth group experience has impacted their life. And like I say every show, thanks so much if you engage with me at all on social media. It really means a lot to me. I do put a lot of time and energy into setting up those daily posts, so having people check them out and engage is always a thrill. The music you hear at the beginning of this show is the instrumental version of the song Sing It Out at Street Level by Pegger and the Rejected. Today, though, I'm doing something a little different. At the end of the show, I'm going to play the song Sinner's Songbook by the Insiders. And again, I chose that song because it's got all three of the big three lead singers, Mojo from the Supertones, Joe Yerke from the Insiders, and Reese Roper from Five Iron Frenzy. I'm going to go through, and I know this is getting really long, but I just did want to call out a couple of the other songs that I did throw in throughout the show. I played Adonai by the Supertones, World's Last Night by the Dingies, Where Zero Meets 15, Banner Year, and Far Far Away by Five Iron Frenzy. The Battle for Centrion, I'm going to say that wrong, I apologize, by Sounds Like Chicken. Wilderness by the Supertones. Again, like I mentioned, Sinner's Songbook will be at the end by the Insiders. Also by the Insiders is Enthos. I always want to say Ethos, and that's not right. It's Enthos. Next and One Wish were both by Buck. L.A. and Ricky Fake by Big Dog Small Fence. Schoolyard Mission by Seven. King of Polyester by the W's. Hands High by the October Light. And then Get Alive by Mojo in the October Light. I played World's Gone Cold by A Billion Ernies and We Are the Youth by Squad 5-0. And last is Psalm 137 by the Dingies. Again, just some of the great songs that I could have played. I had so many more that I wanted to, but I kind of wanted to focus on these, just some of my favorites right now, or just ones I thought would be good to share with people. All right, that's it. I really do appreciate it if you've hung around this long, and I love talking about this stuff, so thanks so much for listening, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Have you ever walked through hell? There was no one you could tell to help you through it all when all else seemed to fail. Why can't we be honest about our struggles and our pains? Skeletons we dance with, our secrets buried in their graves. By the blood only, and that means that you don't gotta live phony, pretending that you're fine, smiling while you die slowly. At the same time, I'm righteous and a simple man. That's what I am while I'm living this lifespan. I'm defeated and that was my last stand. No matter, man, grab my songbook and I'll sing it with the whole fam. We be honest about our struggles and our pains. Skeletons we dance with, our secrets buried in their graves, and we'll stand hand in hand, grateful for the mercy that we can't understand, the love and the freedom that we get from the same sinner's songbook, and we'll stand side by side, smiles on our faces with our broken lives. How would that look? Everyone singing from the same sinner's songbook, and we'll stand hand in hand, grateful for the mercy that we can't understand, the love and the freedom that we get from the same sinner's songbook, and we'll stand side by side, smiles on our faces with our broken